Throughout the 19th century, Mexico was struggling as much for its own soul as it was its survival. Its leaders, ideologies, and even its borders shifted as much as the sands of the Chihuahuan Desert. Military coups became routine, and volatility was the new normal. Porfirio Diaz gave some stability and economic progress beginning in the 1870s, but when he jailed his opponent, Francisco Madero, in the 1910 election, it began the Mexican Revolution and another decade of infighting and civil war. One man at the center of it all was Jose Doroteo Arango Arambula, known forever as Pancho Villa. One of Villa's earliest life events foreshadowed almost his entire life. At just 16, Villa shot and killed a hacienda owner who had raped his sister. He immediately stole a horse and escaped into the mountains. It began a life of killing for what he thought was right, evading the government and the law, taking what he needed, and wrapping himself in the security of the Mexican countryside. He did this for the next 16 years, often living as a bandit, but also with alternating attempts at legitimate employment. His stealing from the wealthy and frequent generosity to the rural poor painted him by many as a Mexican Robin Hood. His talents for banditry and his knowledge of the terrain served him well when he joined the Mexican Revolution on the side of Francisco Madero to depose Porfirio Diaz. Villa fought to bring land rights, political freedom, and economic freedom to Mexico's impoverished classes. He won battle after battle for the revolutionary forces, and Diaz eventually resigned, exiled to Paris, but the revolution was far from over. Pancho Villa fought and won again for Madero in the 1912 Orozco Rebellion, but in 1913, Madero's own General Huerta rose up against him, killed him, and unconstitutionally claimed the presidency. Villa was imprisoned for his previous service to Madero, but eventually escaped to the United States. Not about to see his last 3 years of fighting wasted, he vowed to fight on. Beginning with just a handful of men and some mules, Villa quickly grew his band into the formidable and fearsome División del Norte, the Division of the North, a military force several thousand men strong. Villa was charismatic, a leader. His sympathy for the people and his machismo drew people to him. He could fight, and he could win. After robbing a train of 122 silver bars in April of 1913, Villa and El División was well-funded, well-armed, and they returned that same month to avenge Madero and preserve Mexico. Villa said, quote, "They used to call me a bandit, and I suppose some still call me that, but my heart is clean. My sole ambition was to rid Mexico of the class that has oppressed her and give the people a chance to know what real liberty means. If I could bring that about by giving up my life, I would do so gladly." With that determination, and by allying with other key Madero sympathizers, Villa and his men he called Los Dorados, the Golden Ones, drove General Huerta's forces from town after town. His string of victories had people calling him the Invincible General, while his fighting prowess on horseback earned him the nickname the Centaur of the North. The next 2 years were readily the most successful of his entire life. From his military victories, he was made governor of Chihuahua and implemented many changes longed for by its people. He ensured his men were paid fairly. He broke up the haciendas, redistributing their land, cattle, and wealth to his men, but especially those Dorados who fought for him. He established pensions for widows and orphans. He set up schools, lowered the cost of goods, and even began a bank. And for it, he was popular with the people. However, While these were glorious years for Villa, they were not without their savagery. He frequently killed any who spoke out against him and turned a blind eye to those men who ruthlessly enforced his rule, even killed hundreds of his prisoners. Gold was confiscated from the wealthy and banks alike, and cattle were frequently taken. Whatever Villa needed, he took, and whatever threatened him, he killed. By 1914, Villa's well-armed and experienced Dorados were regularly besting federal troops, and by June, they had broken Huerta's ill-gotten hold on Mexico, and the former general was sent into international exile. But Villa hadn't acted alone. Huerta was beaten with an alliance between Villa and others who would oppose Huerta, such as Emiliano Zapata. In the aftermath, those fragile alliances, born of convenience, were soon shattered, and the men now fought over Mexico's future. 1915 saw Villa in combat against his former allies. His bold and brilliant military tactics now fell short against their more measured and logic-based tactics. In just 3 decisive battles, the most feared military force in all of Mexico was reduced to little more than a shadow. But while his men were nearly vanquished, Villa's will to fight still burned bright. But despite this fighting spirit, it begins a harrowing time in Villa's history. His military is beaten, his support from the US government ends abruptly, ties to the German government abound, and he is still being pursued by the now US-recognized Mexican government. So Villa resorts to what he knows best, eking out an existence as a guerrilla and bandit in the Mexican countryside. But even beaten and on the run, Villa was a proud man, and the wrongs by Mexico and the United States would not be forgotten. Angry and with little to lose, Villa said, "Mexico is a land for the free, and a tomb for thrones, crowns, and traitors." Before dawn on March 9, 1916, nearly 100 of Villa's men galloped into Columbus, New Mexico with malicious intent. Shouting cries of "Viva Villa!" they poured through the small town, setting buildings ablaze and murdering innocent American citizens. However, the raid may not have been simple vengeance against the United States. Villa also stole badly needed supplies, stoked tensions between the US and Mexico, and planned revenge against a local small arms dealer, perhaps for an arms deal gone wrong, a sale of defective ammunition, or that he ceased to even be selling to Villa after the US withdrew its support. Whatever the case, one of Villa's own men confirmed the businessman was a target, but on that day, he was fortunately out of town. This brazen attack on American soil quickly drew the attention of the US government, who sent 5,000 troops, led by General John Blackjack Pershing, to find Villa and to capture or kill him. Known as the Punitive Expedition, or the Pancho Villa Expedition, they scoured the Mexican desert for Villa and his men. They used automobiles and even utilized planes for the first time in US Army history, but they were chasing a ghost among the Sierras. The Army's frustration as they attempted to corral Villa raised his status even more among the people. It was said, quote, "He can march 100 miles without stopping, live 100 days without food, go 100 nights without sleep, and kill 100 men without remorse." Mexican troops under Carranza, also in pursuit of Villa, were equally stymied, with one official report stating, "I have the duty to inform you that Pancho Villa is everywhere and nowhere at once." Several of Villa's high-ranking officers were captured or killed, but after almost an entire year of the US military roving the Mexican countryside, which caused no shortage of tension with Mexican leaders, they finally returned to America in February 1917, in part to avoid the very real possibility of war with Mexico. It was in the month or two that followed, as the Zimmerman telegram was finally revealed and the US entered the Great War, that a Colt was shipped from the Colt factory to St. Louis with a final destination of City Loan and Jewelry Company in El Paso. It's a significant delivery route to note because many arms and ammunition were funneled to Mexico this way, but it's the final destination that speaks volumes. See, most Colts in El Paso were sold by another store, but this Colt, a one-gun shipment, was destined for City Loan and Jewelry, a business that sold guns to both sides of the border, including repeatedly to Pancho Villa. And like its destination, this is no ordinary Colt. Factory engraved in grade 2 coverage, as cut by Master Cuno A. Helfricht, clad in carved pearl grips and factory plated in gold. Even without any historical significance, this is an extremely rare Colt for collectors. Very few first-gen Colt single actions are engraved, and most come toward the end of production. Furthermore, those that are engraved are typically blued and case hardened, or nickel plated. Gold and silver finishes are extraordinarily rare, adding to the already supreme collectability and entering it into the pantheon of world-class firearms are its dual inscriptions to Pancho Villa. The inscription on the backstrap matches other known presentations to Villa and may have been completed at the City Loan and Jewelry. It reads, Al General Francisco Villa de su División del Norte. To General Francisco Villa from your Division of the North. The bolder, block-lettered inscription on the butt is noted by some to be factory work and simply reads, Francisco Villa. A bright accent of sky blue opal serves as the eagle's eye, as well as a perfect exclamation point on this remarkable Colt. Awash in gold, abundantly covered in master factory engraving, and belonging to one of the most famous figures of the Mexican Revolution, it is an elite Colt 6-gun. Other Pancho Villa inscribed arms reside behind glass in Mexican museums. This remarkable Colt is available publicly, right here in the US, and it comes with enough additional research and documentation to fill a book of its own. 2023 marks 100 years since Pancho Villa was assassinated while driving home from the bank, and his legacy lives on today, perhaps stronger than ever. Mexico has declared this year, the centennial of his death, the year of Francisco Villa. But while his legacy remains strong, it is a conflicted one. Was he a friend to the poor and a freedom fighter? Or was he a cruel and murderous bandit? He was uneducated, but a brilliant military mind, a generous, charismatic visionary, and a vengeful, womanizing, authoritarian cattle rustler. People wrote songs to his name, but they also feared it. Perhaps such conflict is perfect for a man who helped build a nation via the destruction of its old institutions and leaders. And so, 100 years later, at the centenary of his death, a glittering golden 6-gun seems the perfect legacy for a man who was also as venerated as he was violent. A literal golden one, it is the last remaining Dorado of Pancho Villa, and it's only at Rock Island Auction Company.